Hello, it's Chip McGee, Superintendent of Schools here in Pelham, and this is Pelham School District Today. Today's episode, looking forward to March 14th vote, has to do with our budget development. And I'm pleased to have with me my business administrator, Deb Mahoney. Deb, will you just introduce yourself and maybe tell us your role and how long you've been working here in Pelham, and we'll stop there.
Sure. I am the business administrator for the school district. I report to you, Chip, and I'm part of the executive team for the district. And I have been with the district since 2013. I started on the day that Wyndham and Pelham split from each other.
You were there.
And my first office was down in Wyndham for a little while until we had a home here, and then I moved up here. And
It was I just don't even know this. Was the office here originally? It wasn't, was it? It was.
So we had a building that was kind of like a trailer that they use for
Like a
a
construction
site, yeah. And so we had that, and so a couple of us were in that building originally, and then we got the modular that we're in now.
Actually, I remember
That came a year after, though.
when Amanda got it, and she brought a bunch of us down because one of the classrooms was just PD space.
Yes.
So look at all this space.
Yes, yes. So we transitioned into that modular building a year after.
Okay.
But before that, we were sharing the space with preschoolers. We were all in one big classroom, and yeah, it was actually a good experience.
Transitions are always interesting that way.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about budget.
Yes.
And it's kind of funny because we've been working together on this, but really, excuse me, for the sake of conversation, let's get to the bottom line, because people watching this are going to want to know what does the budget look like that they'll be voting on March 14th. And so can you just give me the big picture of what the budget that we put forward and it looks like for a citizen?
Sure. So we have spent a lot of time this year really trying to work on areas of reduction and areas we can reduce. In the end, we have a 2.65% increase for our operating budget.
So next year's operating budget, 2.65% higher than this year's.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. And so the process that we take going through all of that includes looking at areas where we can reduce. And we do have reductions in this budget of positions. We have a number of we have 1.7 teachers reduction. We have a 2-hour custodian, we have a hall monitor, and we also have 8 instructional assistant positions. So those were all positions, as you and I know, we went through and we evaluated what we were going to need next year to meet our goals.
Yeah.
And by doing that, we really kind of sharpened our pencil and figure out how we could reduce down some of the costs that we have in our budget that we couldn't reduce down. We call them non-discretionary. Those
Right,
are
because there's some
like,
things beyond our control.
they are. So things like energy contracts, energy costs, those kinds of things we have to pay to keep the lights on and the heat. And so
Yeah, so
we consider
I know
them,
on a residential or personal level, electricity bill, and I'm on natural gas, excuse me, that bill is up quite a bit.
yeah,
So that
Yeah.
happened for us too?
it did. So in this budget, it's about a $210,000 increase for that piece,
Just the increase.
just the increase. So so that's something that's non-discretionary. So it's in the budget, and we have a couple of other things. Our health insurance costs. So that health insurance cost is also a non-discretionary increase. It's about $660,000. And then we have an additional, our teachers are in their 5th year of their contract. So when we look at what that number is, we total all this up, it's about 1.2 million. So those 3 items alone
Just those 3.
exceed what our total increase is.
So if I have it right, that's the 1.2 of the increases you just described are more than the budget's actually up.
Right. So the way we can
How
do
did
that
that happen?
is to cut some positions out. to really kind of look at where we can reduce to reduce our increases overall.
I just want to share one thing that's been my struggle in this budget process is when we came up with those staffing reductions. I was grateful, for example, there was a part-time world language position
Yes,
that was open,
it's open, it's not filled currently.
not filled this year,
Right,
and eliminated from the budget for next year. So it affects no one, no kids, no
Right.
teacher.
correct.
But there is one position at Memorial that we hope, that there'll be retirement or a resignation, someone moving.
Right,
But if not, we'll have to, for that one position, that would be a loss. Someone that's
Correct.
working here now wouldn't be here next year.
yeah,
So all that work to get to our 2.65% budget increase didn't just happen in February. Could you just kind of walk through the process that we use in order to develop this budget for those who weren't tuned into every single school board meeting?
sure. So we start with guidelines in May. So before our teachers leave in June, they're reviewing what they need for the upcoming year.
So
We
you're
did-
already probably thinking about guidelines for the
Yes.
25 budget.
Yes.
All right.
I
So
mean, part of the guidelines is what are our goals for the upcoming year and what do we need? A budget really supports your goals. So that's part of the process, is that you determine what they are, make sure that those are clearly communicated. And then we work through our administrative team, our department heads, to have their requests produced. And
when does that happen?
well, in the month of August, we have most of that work being done. We start presenting to the board somewhere around the last week of August, which is the first segments of the budget. And then on a weekly basis, we're bringing to the board in our public session the segments of the requests that have been asked for.
So that's an answer to the question, what do you guys even do in the summer? Because isn't there nothing to do? So there's
This is
plenty
one
to
of
do on the
them.
budget front.
There really is,
Yeah.
because once we start school, it's quite busy time. So September's very hectic in that way, and then we have the budget all put together. The school SAU office develops the salaries and benefits budget. So all of those things get incorporated. So this is the level one, which is the department level one of the budget.
Level one is, here's the budget that the departments, the principals, the directors all say, here's what we would like for the next year.
Correct.
I know what happens next, but walk through what happens
So
next.
level two is the superintendent's budget.
Yep.
This is where everything is all put together. We're looking at totals, we're looking at departments, we're looking at where increases are, and we're trying to evaluate what it is that you're going to support, that you're going to recommend to the school board.
Yeah, that's where I have to balance requests between not only elementary, middle, and high, but between, I'll have special education requests and facility requests, technology requests, for example, different functional areas, and we just have to work to prioritize.
Right, and look at our plans. Each one of those is driven by plans that we have in place, and so we do need to do that as well in that evaluations process. So,
And I would wish that I could say after level two, it's just done and off we go.
No.
But the superintendent doesn't have the final say. What happens next?
So then the school board has their review where they go through and they ask some very detailed questions about the budget that's been presented to them, and they recommend cuts amongst themselves, and then they agree on their cuts from the budget. And so then that becomes the school board's recommended budget. That's our level three. That is what moves to the budget committee level. And then we present all of the segments to the
Go
budget
through it
committee again in public sessions there. Those are on Thursday evening, so
Yes.
we go through
In
Wednesday.
which month are those happening?
Those start in, I'm trying to remember, the book is due mid-October, so we start in the third week of October with the Budget Committee.
Yep.
And we finish around the third week of November.
Yeah, very much like to be done before Thanksgiving.
Yes, that is the plan.
Mm-hmm.
So we present to the Budget Committee, then they ask their questions, and then they make their adjustments to the budget, and then we have an approved or recommended budget by the Budget Committee. There is a meeting in January, which is our budget hearing. It's also what we call reconsideration, where things that we didn't know at the time of the budget development might come to light.
So we happen to have one that taxpayers, I hope, would be grateful for this year. It's not always the case. What happened this year at reconsideration?
Yeah, so at our reconsideration, what we did was when energy costs, of course, were a big pain for all of us. We did not want to see that kind of an increase for our energy costs.
Yep.
And so what we did was we went back to our consultant and asked them to rerun our future market analysis so they could tell us what we might see in our future supply contracts. And based on that result, we were able to bring a reduction to the Budget Committee for their reconsideration work. And so, that was about $64,000, $65,000 total. So
we were able to lower what we were asking for next year.
Right.
Because we knew energy was going to cost less next year than we originally thought. Actually, the better way of saying it is not cost less, but the increase wasn't as big.
correct. And that's based on the future market, and that's based on our ability to secure the rates that we're estimating that we're going to see. And so there's a lot of work that has to happen for us to achieve those numbers, but we've got a great consultant and we do a lot of work in this area, so.
Yeah. And so once the Budget Committee finishes with reconsideration, it goes forward at deliberative session. And we take the results of deliberative session, and that's what's going to be on the warrant that people vote on March 14th. So that's a big day when every citizen voter in town gets to vote on the budget. What else is on the warrant? Tell me a little bit about the other article.
So the other article is our collective bargaining agreement with our support staff in the district. These are our instructional assistants and our tutors and our recess and lunch monitors. It's about 80 folks. And so we also spent the fall period
fitting in there between all those budget meetings
in our negotiations to come up with the article for the voters to consider for our PESBA increases for our Pelham Education Support Group.
Yes. And so well, let's start with the perspective. Our instructional assistants, first off, in my now almost 3 years, I've gotten to know them, and a lot of them are here in Pelham, and they are such a good group of people. Second is they work with sometimes our most challenging or complicated student situations. And so focusing on them, how would you kind of explain, so what does the contract have for them? What's it going to look like for them next year if this contract passes? What's I'm trying to remember the increase for a new employee, a new IA with no experience. Do you remember what the percentage increase is?
I'm thinking it's 4.5%.
I think it's 4.5% too.
All right. I wasn't 100% because I didn't look at that before I came in here.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
So, so the cost of the contract is something that we go through when we figure out annual cost is a 3-year contract.
Yep.
And so each of the 3 years has a different percentage to the salary schedule. Other than that, we did negotiate some health insurance change. We increased the prescription program from a 3-tier prescription program for health insurance to a 6-tier that adds a mail-in program. I think some folks are familiar with those kinds of programs that reduce costs overall.
That's right.
Which brings down premiums.
So
And
by
since
moving to that mail-in, overall premiums went down somewhat.
Yeah, so our shared cost goes down both for them and for us, so that's a good thing.
All right, and so that's from the IA or instructional assistant perspective. What about for a voter? What will that look like in terms of the warrant? Because there's a tax impact or a budget impact for us.
Right. So there are two warrant articles. One is our operating budget. One is the collective bargaining agreement.
Yeah.
The collective bargaining agreement is about $101,000. That's what's on the ballot. That's what folks will see, that amount. So if both of those items were to pass,
The
that
budget and the PESPA contract.
right. So we talked about the 2.65%
Yeah.
for the operating budget piece, and then there's an additional 0.27%.
0.27.
Correct.
So have you added those together?
It's 2.91% total for both of our articles.
Okay, so if you say yes to both,
Yes.
it's a 2.91%
Yes.
increase in our budget from this year to next year.
Right.
Okay. So I just have to say, I know that you and I worked on this, but 2.91 is not where, say, consumer price indexes were this last year.
It's not.
Inflation was a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
And if I'm right, that's a reflection of things that we had to do to reduce in other areas. All right, so the last thing I wonder about is, one of the things I like about working in Pelham in particular is it's not so big that we can't know people. I know a lot of people in the community, and if a citizen voter wanted to be involved in this process because there's something that's important to them in the budget, or they're concerned about property taxes, where can they engage in this process?
Well, I mentioned about how we do everything in public as far as the presentations of all of our segments of
So
the
all those
budget.
board meetings
all
are
the board
public,
meetings.
yep.
All the budget committee meetings are public. So those are next opportunity to hear about, what's being scrutinized and what areas are being discussed for cuts. So that's another opportunity. And then, of course, we have the budget hearing and we have deliberative. So we have the whole process is built in for citizens to become involved if they have an interest to do so.
Yeah.
And so that is a great part of the work that we do, is that we work for the public and with the public.
Yeah.
So
And so, and of course, on March 14th, they'll have, every voter in town has the opportunity to cast their ballot
Correct.
for their opinion on the operating budget and their opinion on the PESPA contract. One other thing I just want to mention, because I was looking myself the other day, and you have on the PelhamSD.org website, under business office budget information,
yes,
an unbelievable amount of information dating back, I'm remembering it's back as far as 1819, all the public documents, whole budgets.
whole budgets.
Yeah, and everything that we submit to the Department of Education and Department of Revenue Administration about what our budget is each of those years.
Our budget and our expenses, all of our state reports are there.
Yeah. Okay, and so if people want to be involved, that's also a great place to start.
Yes.
Good. This often goes behind the scenes. The budget process is something that, no, not behind the scenes, more like it doesn't get the publicity of, say, a football championship.
That's probably true.
Yes, but it is ultimately really important to people, so I appreciate your willingness to come on and talk to me about it.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So that is our Pelham School District Today. This episode with our business administrator, Deb Mahoney, was on our budget process. Thank you.